Breaking because this didn't start with politics or papers. It started with Prince Louis, small enough to be dismissed, brave enough to ask what adults avoid. In a quiet moment, he asks the one innocent question that cuts through every polished excuse, and King Charles goes still. Not angry. Not amused. Haunted. Minutes later, Camilla's family trip is quietly cancelled, and the palace moves like it's containing a spill no one is allowed to name. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The timing is what makes it feel unreal. This wasn't a casual plan floating around in drafts. It was finalized. Approved, threaded through the palace calendar with the kind of certainty that usually means it cannot be reversed without a reason too serious to speak aloud. Staff had already shifted schedules, security had already mapped movement, and the tone inside the household carried that familiar sense of inevitability, like the decision had already become history. And then Louis asks his question at the worst possible moment, not as an accusation, not as a challenge, but as something simpler and sharper. A child noticing a pattern and asking why it exists. The people in that world are trained to survive by controlling their faces, but even they can't hide what happens next. Charles doesn't respond like a man annoyed by a child. He responds like a man struck by a memory he thought was sealed away. His expression changes in stages: first confusion, then a flash of recognition, then something heavier, almost painful. Not angry, not amused, haunted. The room doesn't need an explanation to understand that something deep has been triggered. Because when a king goes still like that, it isn't about manners. It's about truth brushing too close to the surface. Within minutes, the cancellation begins, not loud, not formal, not dramatic. It moves the way real palace panic moves, through phone calls that don't ring twice, through assistants suddenly using careful language, through a quiet reshuffling that happens so fast it feels rehearsed. Courtiers sense it immediately. Calls start flying between private secretaries and security leads. Schedules are edited in real time. Movement plans tighten. Access rules shift. The entire machine behaves like it's containing a spill no one is allowed to name. And the speed of it tells you something chilling. This household has practiced for moments like this before. Camilla's trip is cancelled without public explanation, and that silence becomes its own kind of headline inside the building. No one says Prince Louis. No one says question. They say timing. They say logistics. They say unavoidable change. But the people closest to power know better. They can read the fear hiding behind polite phrasing. A plan that was no matter what has suddenly become under no circumstances. And when a palace flips like that, it means the reason is not a preference. It's a threat. Because Louis's question doesn't just land like curiosity. It lands like a key turning in a lock. It hints at a family truth children weren't supposed to touch. Something adults have been protecting with smiles, schedules, and controlled narratives. You can feel it in the way people avoid looking at one another, in the way everyone suddenly becomes too busy to speak plainly. It's as if the child has pointed at the very thing the institution tries hardest to hide, the difference between what the family says in public and what the family knows in private. And there's another layer that makes it darker, foreshadowed by the frantic insistence that had surrounded this trip from the start. Someone had been pushing Charles to approve it no matter what. That phrase echoes now like a warning, because it reveals this wasn't simply a family outing. It was something that needed to happen, something someone wanted locked into place. And Louis, without knowing any of that, has interrupted it with a question so innocent it cannot be attacked, without looking cruel. Then comes the most unsettling detail of all. As the staff scramble, as the palace tightens, as the plan collapses, an aide leans in close enough for only one person to hear and whispers a sentence that changes the entire shape of the crisis. He remembered. That's why he stopped it. Not he reconsidered. Not he changed his mind. He remembered. which means this trip was connected to something older, something unfinished, something Charles has been carrying longer than anyone is supposed to realize. And as staff scramble to label it routine, the real story spreads in whispers. What exactly did Louis ask that made the king pull the plug? The terrifying thing about children is they don't aim for the truth, they stumble into it. Louis doesn't ask like a royal, he asks like a child who notices patterns adults pretend aren't there. And that's why his question detonates. It isn't disrespectful, it's simple, it's direct. And it forces Charles to confront something he spent a lifetime managing, the difference between what the family says and what the family knows. Louis's innocence gives him access to questions adults are trained to avoid, because no one knows how to punish a child for noticing what everyone else has agreed to ignore. His words carry that pure, unpolished logic that doesn't care about rank. He asks with the kind of blunt curiosity that sounds harmless until you realize it cuts straight through the palace's most protected illusion. The question implies a mismatched family trip versus why do people get upset? And in that mismatch is a quiet accusation the child never intended. If it's just family, why does it feel like a secret? Why does everyone go tense when certain names come up? Why do smiles look forced the moment the plan is mentioned? Charles's reaction tells the story before anyone dares to tell it out loud. His face doesn't shift into annoyance, it shifts into memory. There's a flicker of regret, a flash of old guilt, and something heavier behind his eyes, like he's hearing not just Louis, but echoes of conversations he spent decades burying. It's the kind of expression that makes the room go still, because it suggests the king isn't simply deciding something, he's reliving something. And when a monarch relives, it means the past is suddenly in the room with you. That's when the adults around them begin doing what they always do: reinterpret, reframe, recalculate. Courtiers immediately start reading the trip differently, not as personal, not as harmless, but as strategic. Legacy positioning. A carefully managed narrative disguised as a family moment. The language inside the palace becomes colder, sharper, more precise. People start asking who approved what, who promised what, who pushed it forward no matter what. And in the middle of that shift is a darker question that no one wants to voice. How did Louis even hear enough to ask this? Because that's the part that makes it dangerous. Louis didn't invent the idea from thin air. He heard something from someone he shouldn't have. A phrase, a comment, a half-whispered explanation that was never meant to reach a child's ears. And now that small leak has become a flood, because child honesty spreads faster than adult control. William and Catherine feel it instantly, the emotional tension that comes from realizing their son's innocence has just collided with the palace's power. They understand something terrifying. In this world, even a child can be turned into a weapon, and even a question can be treated like an act of defiance. And the more the palace turns the moment over, the clearer it becomes that the trip was never simply a trip. At first glance, it sounds harmless: Camilla taking her family on a private trip. A soft story meant to humanize her, to calm the noise. But the palace doesn't cancel harmless things at the last second. That's what makes this explosive. Because behind family is access, behind private is optics, and behind trip is the kind of positioning that can quietly rewrite who belongs in royal space and who gets erased. The itinerary, now whispered about like contraband, included carefully chosen locations tied to royal symbolism and legitimacy, places where being seen is almost as powerful as being titled. The planned timing doesn't read like relaxation, it reads like a camera moment, a controlled image designed to settle debates without ever arguing them. Camilla's circle pushed for it to be confirmed quickly, urgency used like pressure, because speed doesn't just finalize plans, it prevents questions. Palace staff treat it like a public relations chess move, not a family outing, and that alone explains why Charles went still. He saw what the country would be forced to absorb if that image landed, a silent declaration of belonging, stamped into memory without anyone voting on it. Then comes the detail that crosses a line Charles cannot defend. Not necessarily scandalous in public, worse than that. Symbolically unforgivable. Something about who would be present, where they would stand, what it would suggest, who it would push aside. Someone whispers the phrase that makes the air turn sharp, the wrong person in the wrong place, and suddenly the emotional risk becomes obvious. Blending families publicly threatens to split loyalties privately, because it forces everyone to accept a new hierarchy without ever admitting one was being built. And when Charles realizes what the trip could signal to the country, he doesn't just hesitate, he retreats into the one thing that still controls the monarchy: protocol. And once that buried nerve is hit, the palace doesn't focus on the trip anymore, it focuses on who let Louis get close to the truth. Charles doesn't cancel the trip with drama. He cancels it the way kings survive, through silence and instructions that travel faster than explanations. 1 minute, staff are preparing. The next, phones light up, approvals vanish, and people who normally smile begin speaking in clipped, careful sentences. It's not the cancellation that terrifies insiders, it's how quickly it happens, like the palace has practiced for this exact kind of emergency before. The first sign is the sudden stillness in places that are usually noisy with quiet efficiency. Schedules are reshuffled in real time, like someone has pulled a thread, and the whole tapestry is forced to reweave itself instantly. Access restrictions appear without discussion. Confidentiality reminders arrive with language that feels sharper than usual, as if the palace is warning its own staff that curiosity will be treated like disloyalty. It is a soft lockdown, no doors slammed, no alarms raised, just a tightening that makes every hallway feel narrower. And the speed of it is the message: this wasn't a whim, this was containment. Courtiers are instructed to frame it as logistics and timing, because those are the safest words in royal life. Words that explain everything and reveal nothing. It's the oldest tactic the institution has: turn a crisis into a calendar issue, turn fear into a scheduling conflict. But the people inside the machine know what they're hearing between the lines. They know that timing is code for danger, and logistics is code for exposure. That's why the phones keep ringing, why assistants keep checking who is on which list, why certain names suddenly become sensitive. Security protocols tighten around Camilla's family, and that shift tells you everything you need to know about how serious this is. You don't tighten security to protect comfort. You tighten it to protect information. Movement becomes restricted. Permissions are re-evaluated. It's subtle enough to deny and obvious enough to feel humiliating. And in the middle of it all is Charles, shaken, not strategic, almost ashamed. He doesn't look like a man who cancelled a trip to avoid inconvenience. He looks like a man who cancelled it because he saw something he couldn't unsee. That's when the next layer slides into place. Legal and constitutional advisors are quietly looped in. Not loudly announced, not acknowledged, just present in the background like a shadow that wasn't there before. Because when the palace calls those people, it means the issue is no longer family. It's institutional risk. It's reputation. It's precedent. It's the fear that a moment one innocent question has cracked open something that could spread beyond the walls if the right person hears it. Camilla's team reacts with restrained fury, the insult masked as composure. No public outrage, no tantrums, just the kind of controlled anger that is far more dangerous because it doesn't waste energy on noise. They absorb the humiliation and immediately begin calculating how to reverse it. Because in that world, cancellation is not merely inconvenience, it is status, it is power. And being denied quietly suddenly creates a wound that demands retaliation. Camilla doesn't need to argue with Charles to punish the decision. She just needs a new narrative. Within hours, the palace begins to feel the shift, whispers framed as concern, misunderstandings delivered like warnings. The story becomes, a child was confused, a family was embarrassed, and someone overreacted. But beneath that sweetness is a threat. If Louis can stop a trip with one question, then Louis becomes a risk that must be managed. Soft retaliation begins almost immediately. Allies go quiet. Channels get filtered. Staff get reassigned in ways that look accidental and feel deliberate. Camilla's circle pushes a framing. Louis was misinformed or prompted. Because that wording does two things at once: it dismisses the child and implicates the parents. Pressure starts aiming itself toward William and Catherine, not openly, but persistently. Control the narrative at home. Rein it in. Make sure it doesn't happen again. And somewhere behind those polite messages, someone begins tracing the source, trying to find out how Louis heard enough to ask the question that stopped a palace machine mid-motion. Catherine's protective instincts collide with palace discipline, and that collision creates sparks. Because the palace is treating Louis like a liability, and Catherine is treating him like a child who deserves safety, Camilla signals dominance without screaming, and that quiet intimidation is the point it forces everyone to choose between comfort and conscience. Then comes the most toxic detail of all. A source begins claiming Louis repeated something he was told not to repeat. A planted whisper designed to stain credibility, to turn innocence into suspicion, and to make the cancellation look less like Charles's decision and more like William and Catherine's failure. And as the palace tries to bury the reason, Camilla realizes the true humiliation isn't the cancellation, it's who caused it. And once the blame starts floating toward William and Catherine, the crisis stops being about a trip and becomes about family power. This is where it gets personal in the worst way. William and Catherine aren't just protecting their children, they're protecting the future. Because the palace doesn't forgive unpredictability, and children are pure unpredictability. If they defend Louis, they risk looking rebellious. If they distance themselves, they sacrifice something sacred, trust in their own home. And William feels it, the quiet message behind the smiles: control the child, or we will. Catherine refuses to let Louis be weaponized as a problem, and that refusal costs her immediately. The tone around her shifts from sympathy to supervision. People speak more slowly, smile more carefully, as if they are measuring every word for evidence that she is difficult. William senses the trap at once. Apologize too much and you validate the smear. The moment you act like your child did something shameful, you hand the palace the weapon it wants. But if you refuse to apologize, they call you arrogant. If you defend your son, they call you defiant. It is a perfect no-win designed to make the parents crumble and let the machine regain control. The pressure escalates the way palace pressure always escalates: softly, then suddenly. Calm it down, they say, with the warmth of concern. Then it becomes contain it, spoken with the chill of authority. There are quiet suggestions about what Louis should and shouldn't repeat, quiet reminders about appropriate conversation, quiet implications that a child's curiosity can become a national embarrassment if not managed. Catherine hears the threat behind the politeness, and her protective instincts flare not because she is reckless, but because she knows what the palace does to unpredictability. It doesn't nurture it. It disciplines it until it disappears. William carries the dread differently. He feels it like a tightening in the chest, a sense that the palace isn't reacting to a child, it's reacting to a leak. And that's where suspicion starts creeping in. William suspects the trip had implications beyond family bonding. He can feel it in the urgency that surrounded the planning, in the way certain people pushed it forward no matter what, in the speed with which the narrative machine pivoted toward blaming a child. This isn't about manners, it's about power. And somewhere inside him, an old instinct wakes up, the one that tells him when a harmless story is actually a cover story. The emotional toll hits their home first. Private arguments that never fully explode because they are too exhausted to fight the same battle in two worlds at once. Protective instincts clashing with the need to survive the institution. Catherine's anger isn't about reputation. It's about safety. William's fear isn't about headlines. It's about control slipping from their hands. They can feel the palace watching, waiting for one wrong move, one visible fracture, one moment of weakness that can be filed away and used later. Then the turning point arrives, not with a dramatic confession, but with an insider detail William hears in passing one sentence, delivered too casually by someone who assumes he already knows. And it confirms Catherine's fear in an instant. The trip wasn't simply planned, it was structured, engineered, built around something specific. William stops hearing family outing and starts hearing operation. He decides to investigate what the trip was really meant to accomplish. Because he understands now, if the palace is this desperate to control a child, the child must have brushed against something far bigger than anyone has admitted. The most dangerous thing in the monarchy isn't a scandal. It's a photograph that becomes history. William learns the trip was designed around a moment carefully timed, carefully placed, impossible to undo once seen. A family smiling in the wrong setting can rewrite the public's idea of belonging overnight. And Louis, unknowingly, stepped on the exact pressure point that would have made that image irreversible. Evidence appears in fragments at first, an itinerary too precise to be innocent, approvals logged with unusual urgency, planned vantage points, restricted access requests, a route that reads like choreography instead of travel. The public story says family. The private intent screams legacy anchoring. The looming date turns into a deadline, and that explains why pressure to proceed returns even after cancellation, because if the moment fails once, it can be attempted again, reshaped, rebranded, shoved back into place with better cover. William realizes someone in the machine made a paperwork mistake that exposed the plan. And that mistake is the only reason the truth is even visible. Suddenly, Charles' cancellation looks different. Not kindness, not caution. Containment of an institutional risk. An attempt to stop a signal from being sent to the country, an image that would quietly rewrite who belongs in royal space and who does not. And the emotional twist hits William hardest. Louis isn't a troublemaker, he's the accidental alarm. A child who saw through the softness and asked the question that triggered a memory in a king and panic in a system. Then William finds the final detail that makes his blood run cold, a note implying the king was expected to stand beside it. Not just approve it, bless it, make it unchallengeable. And in that moment, William understands the true scale of what Louis interrupted and the real danger of what comes next. And once William starts pulling at that thread, he discovers the trip wasn't cancelled to spare feelings, it was cancelled to stop a signal. And when Charles realizes the palace expected him to bless that image, his silence turns dangerous because he must choose who he protects. Charles has spent his reign trying to balance love and legitimacy like they can coexist without cost. But Louis's question drags the cost into daylight. If Charles shields Camilla, he risks burning the crown's credibility. If he protects the institution, he humiliates the person he fought to place beside him. And the most brutal truth is this: the palace doesn't care about his emotions. It cares about what survives. And that is the real courtroom, no judge, no gavel, only silence and consequences. Charles feels personal guilt collide with royal duty in a way that leaves nowhere to hide. He can sense the public scrutiny circling even before it arrives, because the palace has a sixth sense for scandal. He also feels something worse than scandal, the possibility that his own life's choices are now endangering the very institution he vowed to serve. The weight on him isn't theatrical, it's intimate. It's the knowledge that one innocent question exposed a fault line he's been standing on for years. Advisors split fast, and they split hard. One camp insists the story must be contained buried beneath logistics, smothered beneath timing, managed until it becomes forgettable. Another camp argues that honoring the boundary is the only way to keep the crown credible, because once the public senses the monarchy is staging legitimacy, everything becomes suspect. Charles listens to both, and the cruelty of it is that neither side is wrong. Containment protects the short term, honor protects the long term, but either path leaves blood on the floor. Camilla's camp doesn't wait for Charles to find clarity. They push for a new moment to replace the cancelled one another image, another controlled setting, another carefully orchestrated signal meant to restore the narrative. The urgency returns with the same force as before, just wrapped in different language. This isn't frustration, it's strategy. Replace the missing photograph. Restore the stamp. Remove the doubt. And as that pressure builds, a last-minute intervention attempt begins to form. Someone tries to force Charles's hand, pushing him toward approval by framing it as duty, as stability, as for the country. The trap is obvious. If he refuses again, he looks weak. If he agrees, he looks complicit. The emotional fracture inside the family widens. Trust begins to crack in places that used to feel safe. Camilla's composure becomes sharper, less affectionate, more transactional. William and Catherine feel the temperature change around them, and they quietly prepare to counter-spin with truth, because they know what comes next. If the palace chooses optics, it will need a villain, and in royal life, the villain is usually the person who won't play along. Charles is left with the most dangerous weapon of all what he knows. He hints, carefully, that there is a reason the late Queen would have refused. He doesn't say it loudly, because loudness invites demands for proof. He says it like a warning, like a boundary drawn in air, and that hint changes everything. Because it implies the cancelled trip wasn't merely unfortunate, it was forbidden under a standard older than the current reign. It implies there are rules, lines, principles that Camilla's side is trying to step over in order to anchor something permanent. And the moment Charles implies that out loud, Camilla stops asking for approval and starts building a campaign. The trip doesn't happen, but the war does. The palace can cancel a schedule, not the meaning behind it. Louis's innocent question becomes a crack in the wall, and through that crack pours everything the family tried to keep separate. Truth and optics, love and power, belonging and permission. By the time the dust settles, one thing is clear: someone is going to pay for what a child revealed. Palace factions harden into survival alliances behind closed doors, not because everyone suddenly becomes cruel, but because fear makes people pragmatic. Camilla's escalation is implied in every quiet shift, retaliation without fingerprints, narrative control without announcements, pressure applied through access, invitations, and silence. Catherine refuses to let Louis be framed as the problem, and that refusal becomes its own act of defiance, because it denies the palace the easiest scapegoat. William moves with a colder precision now, positioning proof for the worst possible moment, because he understands the only way to beat a machine built on optics is to introduce something optics cannot overwrite. Meanwhile, Charles's silence becomes the final mystery. Who is he protecting? Camilla, because he loves her and fought for her place? Or the crown, because he knows a monarchy cannot survive if it is caught manufacturing legitimacy? The public is fed logistics, but insiders know it was containment. They know it was a decision made to stop a signal, to prevent an image from hardening into history before anyone could object. And then the final twist surfaces: Louis's question wasn't random. He heard it from someone close. Not from gossip in the press, not from strangers, but from a voice inside the circle. A sentence spoken too casually, a truth dropped like a harmless comment. And now that source becomes the most dangerous person in the palace, because it means the crack in the wall didn't come from the outside. It came from within. And just when the palace thinks it has contained the story, the real source of Louis's question emerges, turning a cancelled trip into a full-blown royal reckoning. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.